Hey, what's up? Zach here, and today I've got the all-new Puma MB.03. And you know, the best part about the Mellow line with Puma is also the worst part, and that's the shoe doesn't change much from model year to model year. The 1 to the 3s are very similar. Now, there are some very subtle tweaks to the 3s that make it pretty different from the 1s and the 2s in terms of fit, and especially in terms of kind of side-to-side grip and stability. So we definitely will get into that. It's interesting that in a lot of other lines, you know, you see these lines just jumping up back and forth in terms of designs. Whereas the MB line, if you like one, you're probably gonna like a lot of the other ones. Like I said though, in the 3s, a lot of subtle tweaks, and I think they do make some big differences. Let's get into it. How is this the strongest part of the shoe? Interesting. Now, starting off in the uppers, you really have to look at, you know, the breathability and airflow mapping of these to really talk about the uppers. From a macro level, they look pretty similar to the 1s and the 2s. The thing that I like about the 3s is, number one, the offset lacing. I think you get a much better lockdown on these versus some other really maximalist shoes. I mean, there is a ton of padding in the MB.03 from the heel counter all the way through the tongue. These are really substantially built upper shoes. Now, you do see these scratch marks here in the uppers of them, which do give a little bit of an egress, you know, for air to get through. If you look at that airflow mapping though, is when I put the fog machine in there, it takes a while for it to actually come out there. Now, the good thing is they're placed all where you would produce the most heat. So that heat's gonna be moving out of the shoe kind of right where you're gonna be producing it, which is nice. However, if you look at the breathability test on these, they still heated up 143 degrees, cooled down another 61.4 degrees. That's actually better than I thought they would be. And I think because, you know, the heat gun goes kind of right towards those scratch marks, I think they do push the air out. So I do think that they're placed in the right areas to give the most flow. I do think though that these will hold on to a little bit more moisture than some other shoes, because I said there's so much foam padding. There's just so much going on in those uppers. However, compared to other shoes in its class, they do pretty average in terms of airflow, but they actually do a little bit better in terms of heat trapping. And on the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, that drag guard on there, that waxy layer, does do a little bit more than I thought it would do. The burr just barely starts to get through that, which is a very nice addition. Now you also have outsole tread that comes up pretty far over. So I think in terms of the MB line for outdoor courts in the uppers, I think these are one of the better ones out there for drag protection, especially once we get to the outsole. We'll see why also I like them for outdoors. But in terms of, you know, an indoor versus outdoor shoe, I definitely think these are the best MB line shoe you can take on those multiple surfaces. Looking at the midsole on the teardown, a lot of similarities from the 1s and the 2s. Really long, pretty stiff bottom loaded shank, really ultra dense, bottom heavy, bottom stable carrier foam. And you get the tube inserts of nitro foam. One thing I noticed about these, and maybe I just look at shoes way too closely, is that the nitro foam is a lot less dense on these. You can actually see a little bit more of a wide open pore. You can see more wide open pores here on nitro foam, especially in the forefoot. So it may be a little bit more forgiving than the 1s and the 2s. Maybe just a little bit less dense, a little more airy. Now, if you look at that setup on the bounce height test, got 32.5 centimeters in the heel and 32.5 in the forefoot. That rarely happens. And even though the nitro foam is higher off the ground, there's more carrier foam in the heel. And like I said, that nitro foam looks a little bit less dense in the forefoot. Still got the same on the ball bearing. So I didn't notice, you know, really much difference in the feeling of the heel and the forefoot. So it might just be that it's a larger insert of nitro foam, and that's why it looks less dense to me, right? It's just not packed in like this one is. So I'm not sure, but at least from the 2s to the 3s, it looks like there was a little bit of a material change in the nitro foam. Now, just like the Stewie 2, these aren't going to set any records for bounce and for launch, but for what they're intended for, which is to be a very stable foam on the bottom, you know, very, very secure. I think it definitely has that. And with those 2 inserts of nitro foam, to me, they're not so much for bounce height, but they're more for forgiveness under the heel and the ball of your foot. So you can still have that really ultra dense foam underfoot and that really bottom stable foam underfoot, but you're not feeling like it's a brick under the ball of your foot or the heel. And getting into the outsole tread of the 3s, this is probably my favorite part of the shoe. These did not require any rubber warming for me whatsoever. They felt physically tacky on a hardwood floor, and they actually felt a little bit tacky on outdoor painted courts too, which is not usually a sensation you get from the same shoe. I noticed that in terms of dust buildup, did not matter. I didn't feel like they picked up much dust at all, and they still felt tacky after hours of use in one single session, as well as going back, again and again, wearing these a few days in a row. So a little bit different than some other MB line shoes where I felt like they rolled very easily to the next shot, because like I said, this is still rolled rubber, right? There's no hard edges on the rubber, so these transition step very easily, and that's why they do this for a very easy side-to-side step. It's the same thing they do on Roger Federer's signature On shoe. But in these, I just felt a little bit more of that kind of hard cutting, tacky sensation on the shoe, even after a while. Now, I think that the best part about that is if you look at the outsole durability test on these 10 seconds high grit sandpaper, not even a millimeter of damage on these. The durometer is actually pretty high. So even though they're not the greatest shoes on an outdoor court in the world, even though the foam is very dense and will protect the bottom of your foot, they are stable on outdoor courts. I still think they do their best work on indoor courts because that hardwood floor kind of add a little bit more bounce. The rubberized court will add a little bit more forgiveness to you, whereas on an outdoor court, that concrete asphalt cement's gonna be pretty dead underfoot, and so this foam, I don't think the foam matches up. However, the rubber does. And just speaking of that deadened feeling, of an outdoor court versus, liveliness of an indoor court, if you look at the speed ratio on these, they only come in at a 1.97, which to me is pretty representative of this shoe. Number one, the uppers, they do take a little bit of time to break in, not much, but a little bit. They're, it's a true mid shoe. There's a lot of material on there. Next thing is, like I said, that foam, as well as a bottom-loaded shank combination, just does not give a ton of launch. If you want launch, you want lighter, airier foam, and you want a top-loaded shank, whereas these dense foam, bottom-loaded shank. Because it is a full-length tread pattern, and because the tread is really nice and gripping, you can get a decent launch, a decent push-off, and really good stopping power in these, which is nice. All the tools this shoe has for you to create your own speed and kind of create your own separation are there. It's just you really have to bring your own speed to the table to extract any of the tools that these give. The fit of the Melos was a nice surprise. The ones in the twos, even though they're pretty bulky shoes, never really felt super forgiving. However, in these narrow, medium, and wide, a 2E width foot, you can just go true to size. I had zero cramping, zero break-in in terms of width in these, even though, like I said, they did take a while to break in terms of dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, right, going north to south. In terms of width, I actually felt that they were nice and forgiving because of the lace line, how offset they were. You can kind of dial that in. And because of just all the nice bulky padding in there, there's just a lot to break in right on that way. In terms of the snake bitten foot, these accept orthotics very, very well. Low profile, bulky orthotics, I think just fine in these, especially how high the lace line goes and the lack of heel slippage. And even on their own, I think they're really forgiving because you got that nitro foam in there. Now, if you are a really heavy player, you're gonna bottom out those nitro foam inserts after a while, so you probably will need an orthotic in there. But remember, that dense foam with a bottom-loaded shank, it's going to protect against a lot of things on the bottom of your foot, namely any shock-induced injuries, micro motion, things like that. Dense bottom-heavy foam really does stop a lot of that torque in your heel and can just give a much more cocooned experience in the shoe. So in terms of any snake bites on the bottom of your foot, lumps, bumps, bruises, whatever, these are very, very good. You just have to, like I said, accept the fact that they're also bottom heavy as well. And looking at the playability of the threes, I actually spent a little more time in these than I did with some others because I actually had a lot of videos stacked, but before I got a chance to review these, so I had them on my feet for a little bit longer than some other shoes. I will say, in terms of just like for shoot-around practice, these are one of the best out there just because they're so comfortable right underfoot when you're kind of standing in static stance, right? That dense foam just allows your foot to kind of sink in there. It feels really nice. In terms of kind of transition step, I would say, I was doing my thing where I kind of go up and down the court a lot, just kind of run layup to layup. You see it on the drone sometimes in my videos I do that. And that's kind of how I test out the forgiveness of them going north to south. These definitely were not the easiest shoe to kind of get up and down the court on. I'm a shorter person, so a taller athlete is going to be able to extract a little bit more easy rolling on these from that bottom heavy foam. So I think the taller you are, the easier these are going to be going north to south. In terms of the shiftiness, these are definitely the shiftiest Melo shoes out there. And in terms of stability, these are definitely the most stable Melo shoes in the lineup. It seems like really just subtle kind of, I'm not really sure how much change there was to the shape of the last, but at least to me, even though they didn't have plastic from the midsole to the uppers, which I was kind of disappointed because I always liked that in previous models where they had like the patchwork plastic that really kind of gave, you know, more stability in the heel. Whereas these, it seems like they get more stability just from the shape, how the outsole tread interacts with the court. I found that stopping on a dime, going from high speed to low speed really quickly in these was very easy versus some other Melo shoes where they were stable, but they weren't as stable as the shoe looked, whereas these, they are as stable as the shoe looks. And like I said, I think a lot of it has to do just with the lace line and just how secure you can get with the lace line on these. And like I said, they do have some rubber that comes up there. I'm not sure how much stability that's imparting to the shoe, but I would say the stronger and bigger of a player that you are, the more you will extract from these. Like I said, these are not gonna win any awards for jump force or jump height, but they are very bottom stable shoes. And if you want a shoe that really is just gonna give you a nice stable base underfoot, say you like the Stewie 2, but you want a little bit more of a maximalist shoe, you want a little bit, you know, more lockdown, then yeah, the MB line is gonna be really nice for you. I think in terms of someone that's got, you know, really all the speed and the shiftiness in the bag already, then I think these, like I said, are just gonna give you grip for days, and they're gonna give you smooth transition step with that rubber for days. So I just gotta be the right player for these. I think a really strong power small forward is gonna get the most out of these because they're bringing all the jump force, they're bringing all the kind of the strength to the table already. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on these. You know, are you going for the threes? Do you like where the line is going? Do you like that they don't really change much from shoe to shoe? Love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you do want to see the other sibling to the MB.03, the Puma Stewie 2, which I think is kind of has a lot of the best parts of the MB line with a little bit more shiftiness in it, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you somewhere with Sneakerverse.